we start to better understand ourselves, what really interests us, and with technology and so many changes, where you can actually take your potential to the next level. So that's been super fun about the podcast is it can showcase lots of different people so that listeners can say, yeah, I have that degree. I didn't realize this could be an option for me.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
What's up, podcaster? It's your host, Adam Adams, and today I'm joined with Nikki Green, and we're going to be talking about anything and everything podcasting. Now, if you want Nikki's full bio, just scroll down. Her bio is there. The podcast is called Stand Up and Stand Out. So you can also find that link and her business as well. Just scroll down and you can have all the links to her social, her business, her podcast, and read her bio. She serves people in transition. For example, school to work or work to entrepreneurship to make sure that they are successful. And her podcast, Stand Up and Stand Out, I've been on it. And so we will try to also link that episode down in the show notes as well. So that way you can check it out. And we're going to jump in and find out a couple of questions. And I want to start with seasons because I looked at the podcast and I was like, Nikki, is it true you haven't published in 7 weeks? And she goes, yep, that was the end of a season. We're starting a new season. So I want to talk about seasons first. Nikki, why do you choose seasons? How long have you done seasons? What do you like about seasons? Do you lose listenership because of seasons? Do you gain listenership because of seasons? Give us the rundown on that.
All about seasons.
Yeah.
Well, I found it actually really helps to solidify the message. And everybody runs their podcast differently. But because I'm really trying to capture specific audiences and stay relevant to kind of themes that are going on, I want to make sure that I'm capturing that in kind of an encapsulated amount of time. So between 10 to 12 episodes makes up a season for me. So similar to your Netflix shows usually. And so each time I really sit down with my team and we talk about, okay, what is going on that we really want to make sure we highlight. The beauty of it too is podcasts are evergreen. So as soon as we finish a season, we can still go back and promote any of the previous seasons. We can also, since we do a lot of podcast swaps, promote other people's shows that have been on our show that maybe have another show. So it really helps, I think, that audience engagement to do more than just, okay, one and done, but let's see how we can keep it living throughout that time in between.
So you say, I'm hearing you on some of those parts and I'm absolutely agreeing. But the part that I'm wondering if we're not aligned on, I'll bring that up as well. But the parts that I think that make a lot of sense, it's kind of cool to have like 12 episodes, all kind of centered around the same thing, where you can really focus and you can really capture and solidify what message you want for that type of topic and take care of it. The question that I have is that it sounded like you said something like you're serving the listener more, you're helping the listener more, or that the listener learns more by having a couple of months off or something. And I want to understand what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, especially because some of my main audience are people that are in school. They are used to kind of a semester mentality still, right? Is like, oh, I went and took this class for a couple of months and then I get a break, right? And then I go and I take the next class. And so that's kind of how we started that original version of doing the season is kind of getting a break. And, people get busy. People have lives. There's lots going on. And especially there's so many podcasts out there. And so, you may lose people for a while, but that's why I like to refresh them again. And, your episode on our show was one of our top episodes. So, hey, then we'll have a blog come out and we'll also put it in written form. So continuing to showcase how the podcast can be more than just one thing on one day.
And what happens when you're on a break? Like what happens in the middle of a season for you? Like, for example, I'm going to pretend like you take about 2-ish months off. And during that 2-ish months, are you twiddling your thumbs? Are you traveling? Are you celebrating birthdays and Christmas and New Year's and all these other things? Or are you recording and going eager at it and writing things down and practicing and then getting ready to publish? Like, what does it look like in the interim?
Yeah. And it's trying to use my time to the best of my ability. And this is something really I learned over the time. When I did my first season, I was like, record, release, record, release, record, release. And it was really kind of stressful, especially because we were still learning the craft of podcasting and what it was going to take to get the shows out there. Now I batch record. And so I have that idea in mind of what's going to be the theme. And based on my travel schedule and everything else going on, I get the guests all within a couple of week time period, which works out fantastic. Then I'm in a good rhythm, they're in a good rhythm, right? And we can keep that flowing. And then we put everything into editing and we slowly release them. But it also helps because of my travel schedule. Now with in-person events happening, my main part of my business is motivational speaking. So I'm on the road. Right after this, I'm heading to Vegas, then I'll be in Atlanta, then, Pittsburgh. So it's very hard to podcast when I'm on the road and have high quality that I'm used to here in my studio.
I'm hearing you talk about doing speaking events, and the listener might want to do some speaking events. How do you get yours? What did you start to do? How did you get the snowball rolling there?
Yeah, in my corporate career, I did a lot of events, but I was talking about very exciting accounting and no one wants to listen to that right now. So as I moved into my business, I still had a lot of great connections, but it was a pandemic. So everything was virtual, but it was a great start because I could be in Atlanta, technically, right, in the morning, and I could be in Pittsburgh in the afternoon. So I was really able to stack up a lot of virtual events, and that was a combination of podcasts, summits, webinars, all sorts of different things. And so then from there, things started opening up in person, especially here in Chicago. So this summer, I have been everywhere from Wrigley Field to, Sundays on State Street, and then all kind of different stuff at the Chamber and different places in between. So it takes legwork. It really takes networking to connect with event planners, know what's going on, make sure you're finding your audience.
Let's pretend that the listener is at a basic level. What would step one be? What would just the first thing end up being? Would you write the talk, or would you call somebody, or would you network, or what's kind of the first part?
Yeah, it's kind of like your podcast, right? Is where do I begin? And it's what am I focusing on? Yeah, you can write a talk, but who am I talking to? So you really need to identify what the audience is and what the message is that you're trying to portray. Then you can go into more depth and you'll have all kinds of different talks that you might do for different types of audiences, but you really have to nail what is it that you're selling, right? At the end of the day, what's your message and how are you trying to help people?
Okay, so after I identify the message and I figure out how I'm going to help them, what's next?
So now you have to figure out, well, where are those people? Where are those people that need your help? So since for me, I work with people in universities, hey, we got to start calling some universities. Most of them have a career center. They have a library. I've written books. So it already starts giving me a few places for me to go connect with them, and they'll have events. Sometimes they have budgets. You either jump into an existing event or see if they'll host one specifically for you, like say when I launch a book.
Okay. So step one, identify the audience. Step two, figure out how you're going to help them. Step three, find the people. So start calling universities, for example. And are these paid? Are they non-paid? Are some of them paid and some non-paid? Where do you draw the line on what you're going to accept or not?
Yeah, like all businesses, you need to make sure that you have a variety of revenue streams to balance out what, your opportunities are. A lot of times today, there's free opportunities for you to speak, but that doesn't mean you don't get paid. You have to think of what are the other things that will happen coming out of that event. The number one thing being getting the next event. But number two is really serving your community. So if you do coaching, I have books. If I want them to listen to my podcast, there are other ways that I can monetize that event by continuing to bring them along on the journey of products and services that I sell to help them with their problem.
Would you say that monetizing the event with products and services or paid speaking would be step four? Is there something in between finding the people and monetizing the event?
Well, you need something to monetize before you get there. I think a lot of people think that everything is going to be paid, which generally are big keynote. You already have to have a big name before you're going to get a lot of those large ticket payments. So before you go present, you need to figure out what exactly am I going to get out of this event. So if you have an existing coaching program, if you don't have a book or other kind of service that you're trying to offer them, then you need to make sure that's in place as a part of your business. And then you have a lot to offer once you get to the event.
Should we be afraid of having a call to action when we're speaking, though? Like if we go and speak, how do we know if we're allowed to even have a call to action, like for a product or service, or if it's just in order to be in front of them and they don't want us to pitch at all? Like what do we think about there?
This is really a delicate line. Some people, when you talk to the event planners, they will be very clear about what you're allowed to do. So it's important that you, again, trying to get booked again, you are kind and polite and respecting the rules of the event planner. But That doesn't mean through your natural course of your talk, you're not going to talk about how you solve people's problems. So if I go to a university and I happen to say, oh, well, I do company workshops where I also help small businesses through these types of challenges. That's not a hard call to action sell, but it is still me planting the seed to tell people other things about what I do. So it's really finding that blend of, I'm giving you a call to action without breaking the rules and upsetting somebody.
I like that. Once I was speaking at an event about real estate, and there's the leaders of the event, and then there's the guy who's still kind of in the leadership, and he was my friend, and he flew me out there. When I say he flew me out, he made me fly out on my own dime. And because I was paying for it on my own, I just said, hey, do you want me to pitch? Do you want me to not pitch? And he's like, oh, bro, just pitch whatever. And so I restructured my talk so that I could pitch. I restructured it so that it would have a call to action, that I would be planting seeds throughout, so that at the end, it would make a lot of sense for me to say, this is what you do next. And as I started to pitch, I would say about a minute-ish into a 3-minute pitch, the leader, he was like cutting me off. He goes, that's it. And I'm like, oh, let me just finish this part. And he goes, no, we don't allow any pitching in your pitching. He said that in front of, I don't know, like 60 or 70 or 80 people, something like that. It wasn't a huge event, but it was fairly packed. And I felt like a dummy because somehow there was like a miscommunication. But anyway, I ended up still selling some things because I started the pitch. And the one guy, Roger, told the other guy that it was kind of like, that's what he had told me. And so I didn't get in too much trouble with Dean. And they said that they would invite me back. But I thought it was really interesting how
you
that
got
can
lucky
happen.
on that one.
So I think when I asked kind of like in passing. And I think what I could have done a little bit better was been like really intentional about it. I'm wondering if I just like made the one guy feel uncomfortable, or I don't know how it happened, but I thought it was interesting that they're like, stop, no pitching, get off the stage. But anyway, that was fun.
And we've all been to events like that. And it is exhausting because it comes across sometimes as that like kind of used car salesman. And I've done some of those pitches like that myself before, maybe not even on purpose, but you realize you're really trying to make a connection with the audience. And so if you can't really connect and resonate with them and tell your story, then maybe you'll sell them one small thing, but you're probably not going to have a long-term business relationship with them, which is really what you're ultimately looking for.
Hey, so let's talk about books. And here's the question. Like, you're a speaker, you're a podcast host, and I'm not even sure how many books you've written, but I think it's at least 4.
I got 4 now.
She's giving me a 4 for those of you who are not watching. So what do you think for the listener who's a new podcaster? Let's say they've been doing it for a year or 2, or they're the other listener who's about to launch a podcast. They don't want to make any mistakes. Obviously, maybe it's not obvious, so I'll just say it. My listener is generally a business owner. They do something like you and something like me. They serve people, they help people, they grow people, and they want to monetize. So here's the question. Should we have a book? Should we have a podcast? Should we have both? Why or why not?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely think they're complementary. And I've seen some really creative new things that people are doing too, to actually blend those mediums. Because as a business owner, you're busy. And so most people, the first answer is, I don't have time to write a book, right? And yeah, you can get a ghostwriter and do all these other things. But ultimately, you want it to be, if it's nonfiction, about your business, about the services and things that you offer. So I've seen some really incredible ways where people are actually dictating, basically, right into a podcast, their knowledge, and then using that podcast to recraft the book. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can easily do both. And I've done the other way. I wrote my book and then I used it on the podcast. We talked about the topics with other subject matter experts. And so it elevates the book then by showcasing it's not just me writing the book in the closet, right? It's other people around the world that know about this topic. And here's why they think it's also important. So I would say definitely both.
Definitely both. Okay. Well, how about if I ask you this question instead then? Which is more valuable to you in your business, Nikki? Which one, if you could only pick one? You don't have to say podcast because we're on a show about podcasting. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm asking you genuinely, if you could only pick a book or a podcast, which one is more valuable to your business?
From a branding and reach perspective, the podcast is so much easier. The podcast reaches so many people. Whereas a lot of times with a book, especially nonfiction, people kind of feel like, I don't like reading, or I don't like reading nonfiction, unless they're really those type of people that are trying to study what you're talking about. And it could be very niche. If you're talking about real estate, if I don't know anything or care about real estate, I'm not going to pick up your book. But I could still be interested in your podcast, because your podcast could bring on interesting people. It could talk about other things not real estate related, general business. So I feel like the podcast has a broader reach, and you have a lot more opportunity to reach your audience.
How do you serve your perfect client? Let's go back to something I mentioned to the listener right in the beginning. The type of people that you work with are people that are in a transition. That might be from university to work, and that's one of the reasons why you called so many universities to speak. And another might be from, the corporate world, a W-2, a 9-to-5, to an entrepreneurship, which is like a midnight to midnight type of job. I want to understand how your podcast feeds into that. So I want to understand a little bit more of your business model and the podcast, how it serves the business.
Yeah, what I find with a lot of people that I'm working with is they're a bit in a period of that they're lost. They know they're not happy with where they're at, but they're still trying to figure out that next thing. And so when I started interviewing guests to be on my podcast, I wanted to showcase what real careers are like. What it really takes is like, oh, we start in this degree, and then I started this job, and then I took a left, a right, and upside down and flipped over, and I did something else entirely different. That's what real careers are like, is that we start to better understand ourselves, what really interests us, and with technology and so many changes, where you can actually take your potential to the next level. So that's been super fun about the podcast, is it can showcase lots of different people so that listeners can say, oh, yeah, I have that degree. I didn't realize this could be an option for me.
What about the call to action on your podcast? What is the call to action? Do you use a call to action? When do you use? How often do you use? Is it a paid thing, a free thing? Is it the book? Is it a funnel? What's your call to action on your podcast, and how do you get people that are listening into your business?
Yeah, now that we've got the Chameleon Mindset kind of complete package program, it's not just the book. And again, maybe they don't read or don't like reading, and maybe they want to do an online course, which allows them self-study. So we allow them one free module that then they can go check out the course. And because again, it's young people, it's TikTok size, less than 5 minutes. You can have the attention span right there in the middle of the podcast. And it doesn't really take away, because usually we're talking about my books and topics within them. So it's a very easy blend between that. And then if they really are interested, personalized coaching, obviously, from me.
Cool. Here's what I think I heard. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's many more than 2 different calls to action on your show. Right. It's not just one thing. Is that right?
Exactly. I try to rotate it through so that, again, we don't have fatigue with the audience, that we're continuing to offer different products and services. And we're customizing to the guest sometimes as well. It's like, okay, well, what's going on with the guest? If this guest is launching a new book, it makes sense to talk about a book, right? Not to take them off on a tangent.
I like that a lot. And I do that on my podcast. So I want to get a little bit more detail on your calls to action here in a second. After just kind of sharing what it is on my side, I want to hear like what's different about yours. I think we have 4 different outros on the podcast and 3 different ads. More than half of the podcasts that we have an ad. We never advertise for anybody else. Some of the ads are really not even a call to action, but here's a valuable thing for you. And on the outros, it's the same thing. I've seen on other people's podcasts, the outro, they might say, follow me on Instagram. This is my handle. Follow me on TikTok. This is my handle. Follow me on Facebook. This is my handle. Go to my main website. This is it. Download my book. This is it. And make sure you like, and then make sure you subscribe, and make sure you comment, and make sure that you do this. So what I did is I took, what are my 4 most important calls to action? And then I swap them. So if I've got 8 different episodes, you'll hear each one exactly twice. So it rotates like that. How does yours rotate, and what does that look like on your show?
Yeah, and that goes to the planning of the season as well, because when I know, who are all the guests going to be in advance, I can put that theme together, not just for what the guest's going to talk about, but also what am I focusing on to make sure I'm supporting my business. And so it allows us to have that kind of pre-planned outline, and the same way, multiple intros, outros, so that we can alternate as we're going, and I can record them in advance, and then the team has the whole plan all in one place, and they can stitch everything together seamlessly.
I want to hear about the next season that's coming out. What's about to happen? Why? Who did you get? What were you excited about? What are the calls to action? I just want to understand really from almost like a reverse engineering perspective for the listener to kind of think through, if I'm going to do seasons or if I'm just going to have a podcast, how do I think through what's important and what's not, what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do when going into this type of content? So just tell us what you're excited about for the season, what's different about the season, what steps you've taken, what calls to action that you have.
This next season, season 6, I'm really excited because we're focusing on community, and we're focusing on different types of business owners and how they have built their community, so that you have not just one and done kind of customers that come and go in your business, but you are investing in them in the long term, because it takes so much to acquire customers. And now this is really a new way of making sure those community members continue to feel supported, they get the services that they need, and as you grow, they grow with them. So I have everything from a CPA to an energy healer, from a former Major League Baseball player to a nonprofit. So really kind of running the gambit of different type of businesses to, again, showcase what we can do with our talents, but with a focus on community and how we're building community and where I've met them through my network of different types of communities themselves.
How far along is that building community season so far?
Yeah, we're half recorded. So we're 5 into about a 10 episode. So sometimes we do a couple bonus episodes, but really excited for the lineup. I'm traveling, like I said. So the next couple episodes will get recorded and everything will start coming out in October.
And when it comes out, let me ask you this. Are you going to record all 10 and bonuses before it ever comes out? Is everything going to be edited and approved before it's launched? Or are you going to start launching right away while still recording the last couple episodes?
Yeah, 50-50. And so half are recorded, half will start going out, and then we'll record the next batch, and then those will go out as well. Our goal is always to have everything released before the holidays, because again, that's when people start disappearing a little bit, listening less to podcasts, and probably spending more time with family. And because I have both a free and a paid community, it allows me to, again, alternate what I'm supporting throughout the podcast to talk about, hey, you can join the free one, or if you're really interested, you can start joining the group.
So I've got 4 questions that I want to ask you. The first is about building community, what you've learned so far. The second is how you promote the show. Third is the biggest mistake you've made with podcasting. And the fourth is just your best advice. But that'll be right after these messages. Hey, my friend, as you know, this episode is sponsored by my company, growyourshow.com. We want you to be able to have the best tools at your disposal without costing you a whole arm and a leg. So right now you can get a free list of vetted equipment that like mics, mixers, webcams, sound treatment, editing software, everything that you need. I created the whole PDF with direct purchase links just to save you time and money, to help it be more convenient for you. So this free PDF will help you skip all the guesswork. If it's on there, it's vetted and approved by yours truly. And if it's not on there, it's probably not worth the money. So go ahead and get yours at growyourshow.com/PDF. Let's get back into the show. We're back with Nikki Green. And before the break, I mentioned I wanted to ask her a few questions. The first being, how does she build community? What has she learned so far? Second, how does she promote her show? Third, biggest mistake she's ever made. And fourth, the best advice that she has for you, the listener. So tell us, what have you learned about building online communities with your listener?
Yeah, it's like a snowball. The first few, it takes a bit, and people are busy and they don't know what platform they want to be on. And I really focused on LinkedIn. This is about careers. It's about your journey. So I wanted it to be a professional platform. And once a few people join, the word of mouth takes care of itself.
Okay. Well, what do you do to monetize? I've heard how to build it, but now what do you do with it? Why build it? What's important about a community?
Yeah, well, from the community, that's where now you have a captive audience that's interested in you And now you need to get them interested in your products and services. So having the free community allows them to socialize, get to know each other, and start to get a little bit of awareness without that high pressure sales tactic. Then gradually either they'll upgrade to the paid community and then have different types of products and services that we offer, or they'll still just be like, hey, we're going to do a book club and you bought the book. Thanks for, the monetization there.
Okay. How do you promote the show? Like, what are you doing to grow your audience? Are you talking about the show whenever you write a book? Are you talking about the show on social media? Are you talking about the show when you're speaking at events? Are you talking about the show just calling people and asking them to check it out? How do you promote the show?
Yeah, it's been awesome having in-person events all summer long here in Chicago. And so we made up postcards, kind of going a little bit back to old school with QR codes right on them where people can go listen directly on their favorite platform to be able to listen to Stand Up and Stand Out. So whether I'm at an event, whether I'm selling books, any kind of these in-person things, or whether I'm just eating food at a restaurant, I give it to my server and I got a new listener.
Awesome. I've been wearing this shirt. So my team, we made these shirts about a little over 2 years ago, and there was 3 different kinds. The green one says, ask me about my podcast.
I got that one.
And that one's the frustrating one. It works. And that's the frustrating part because you are in a mall, you're at a restaurant, you are on a walk at the park, trying to keep your heart rate up, trying to keep the exercise up, or you're in a hurry to get back to the car. And at random times, people are like, ooh, tell me about your podcast. So that one works. That one definitely works. But I haven't been doing as many things as you are to let servers and everybody else know. So I think that was really cool. How about the biggest mistake you've ever made?
Oh, absolutely. When I started the first 5 episodes, I wrote them. I obviously interviewed and was the host of them. Then I tried to do all the editing. I tried to figure out the music. I tried to figure out how to put them on the platform. After 5 episodes, I was exhausted. I was ready to quit. So I realized very quickly what was not my forte, which was a lot of the editing and the fine tuning. And I was very fortunate to get an apprentice come in who is a musician. He has a great ear for audio, already knew how to use a lot of the equipment and wanted to learn about podcasting. So
Okay, so the biggest mistake that you had made is trying to wear all the hats in the beginning.
Don't do it.
I want to ask you the best advice, but it can't be that you got to offload stuff because you already said that. So what's the second best advice that you could give to the listener?
My advice is just start. We overthink it. I hear so many people, whether it's a book, a podcast, a business, oh, this, and then this. When I do this, then I'll do that. And they're always constantly procrastinating as if there's some level of perfection they're going to get to, and then it'll all fall in perfectly. It's not going to go perfect. We need to fail fast, and you need to start. So my best advice to my clients, to anybody that I work with, people that come on my show, just take that first step and go after it.
So we've learned a lot from you today. I want to share a couple things that we've got here. One is how you do seasons, what you think about seasons, and how it helps you. Another one is if we are going to be speaking, if we're going to be trying to get on stage, that there's a few things that we should do kind of first. The first one is to identify the audience. Secondly, now we got to figure out what is our unique offer. How do we help that person? The third is how do we find those people? Now we know who we're serving and how we're serving them. How do I get in front of them? And to just start calling universities or whomever it is. And finally, figuring out how to monetize and do a call to action. So figuring out like the product, the service, if we're getting paid to be the speaker, if we've got a book, if we've got a funnel, etc. I remember asking you, and I was scared. But I was like, just answer however. Like, is it a book or is it a podcast? You said both. And then I said, absolutely not. You got to pick one or the other. Which one is more valuable for your business? And you said podcasting was. And I thought that was interesting. And then we talked a little bit more about building a community. How do you promote the show? And basically said you go everywhere to promote it. The biggest mistake was that you try to do it all yourself in the beginning. And then the best advice is to get started, to do it and go ahead and start failing forward. I appreciate you, Nikki. Again, if you're listening, her show is called Stand Up and Stand Out. The link is down in the show notes. And also the link when I was on her show is going to be in the show notes for you too. Her business link is there. Links to any social media that she wanted to connect with you on. And also the link to the podcast, Stand Up and Stand Out. If you're listening, and I know you are, the next episode's a short episode. It's one where I took a little bit of time to figure out what are you struggling with? What do you need to know? And that's going to happen on the very next episode. And short enough that you can listen to this one and that one. So I'll see you there. By the way, one way to ensure that you don't miss out on great content that we're producing on a regular basis is to make sure you're subscribed to the show. You need to be subscribed or following the Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to it in order not to miss all of that. And before I let you go, I need to mention, because a lot of people are asking, do you help? Can you help me with this? And the answer is yes. My company actually does it. It's called Grow Your Show. And you can find that at growyourshow.com. Our clients, they call us the easy button for podcaster because they simply have to record their episode. And they know that every single thing else is done for them. We sweat the hard stuff so you can be the star of your show. And if you would like help to make sure that we're editing and publishing and promoting and doing your social media, it's all in one place. And I think it's pretty affordable. You'll have to take a look for yourself. Just go to growyourshow.com and check us out. And by the way, I'll see you on the next episode.